Joining us now is renowned cult expert and deprogrammer. Families reach out to him when they need help staging an intervention. Rick Allen Ross, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for taking the time. All right, so how do you get them out? How long does it take?
Dan, it's a process. It's much like a drug or alcohol intervention. It can take 3 or 4 days working with the family and the cult victim. And as Sarah Edmondson alluded to, it's an educational process. That is making that person aware of how cults manipulate people, specifically their techniques of manipulation, and defining what a destructive cult is, which is 3 core characteristics that I would say are the nucleus for any definition I've seen of a destructive cult. 1, you have a dictatorial leader like Larry Ray or like Keith Raniere. 2, they use identifiable coercive persuasion techniques to gain undue influence, as we've heard. And then 3, if it's a destructive cult, they exploit and do harm to the members. And that may vary by degree from group to group. So some groups are much more destructive than others. Ray and Raniere were at the top of the scale. They exemplify the most destructive and heinous kind of cults that you could encounter.
What is the success rate? I mean, so you get a family, you get someone who's been in a cult. I would assume there are some failures too.
I would say about typically 3 out of 10 people that I work with will decide to leave typically in the first day. And despite their family's pleas and quite frankly, begging them to stay. So 7 out of 10 at the end of the intervention will decide that they want to leave the group or take a break from the group. Now, some of the people that leave in the first day may eventually leave largely because of the information that's been shared by the family and I during that day. So it's a process. What you're hearing from people talking about Larry Ray and Keith Raniere is what is called coercive persuasion. This was first identified by psychologist, professor at MIT, Edgar Schein. It's a 3-stage process, Dan. First, you break people down. And that can be done through, browbeating them, putting them on the hot seat in a kind of attack therapy, humiliating them, forcing them into false confessions. But your goal is to break them down, or as Schein would say, unfreeze them from where they're at. And then second, you manipulate them within an isolated environment. You socially isolate them, you control the environment, and then you implement the change that you want. And then finally, you lock them in, or as Schein would say, you refreeze them. And again, this is dependent on social isolation, peer reinforcement from other group members, and that's how it's done. And no matter what the group leader is, whether it's Raniere, whether it's Ray, they use these same techniques of manipulation. So the education in the process of an intervention is to make the person aware of how they've been manipulated.
I've got to believe that for parents, family members, loved ones, it's got to be maddening, right? I mean, I'll bet that when you're sitting there, that some of them just want to yell, right, at the person and say, hey, hey, hey. And I'm sure you have to calm the family members down, too, to say, look, there's a process here. We have to do this the right way.
Well, in my book, Cults Inside Out, I lay it all out in a chapter on coping strategies, preparation for an intervention, and intervention. And Dan, you're exactly right. I have to coach the families and help them to understand what they can say and must not say in the intervention. And you don't want to shame a person in an intervention. You want to recognize that they are a victim and that they have been preyed upon by a psychopath like Larry Ray or like Keith Raniere. And so you want to make it as easy as possible for them to navigate out. So you don't say, whoops, hey, how come you can't see this? Or what were you thinking when you are involved in this group?
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.